The dust-laden wind carried the sound of hoofbeats long before the rider appeared on the horizon. Penelope Vance clutched her tattered shawl tighter around her shoulders as she watched the lone figure approach from the east, the setting sun casting a golden outline around horse and rider. Her wagon stood broken beside her, one wheel shattered beyond repair, and the letter in her pocket, the one disowning her from her family, felt heavier than the meager possessions she'd brought with her to the New Mexico territory in 1876. The rider slowed as he approached, and Penelope could make out the broad shoulders, the weathered Stetson, and the cautious way his hand hovered near his holster. A man accustomed to trouble, then. She straightened her spine despite her exhaustion. "Evening, madam," he called, his voice carrying across the prairie. "Seems you've found yourself in a predicament." "My wagon will broke," Penelope replied, forcing her voice to remain steady. "I was headed to Santa Fe." The man dismounted with fluid grace that belied his tall frame. As he came closer, Penelope noted his strong jawline covered in several days' worth of stubble, and eyes the color of the New Mexico sky, clear blue with depths she couldn't fathom. "Name's Zachariah Garrett," he said, removing his hat and revealing sun-streaked brown hair. "Most folks call me Zach." "Penelope Vance," she offered, extending her hand in the proper manner her Boston upbringing had instilled in her. Instead of the brief handshake she expected, Zachariah's calloused fingers wrapped gently around hers for a moment longer than propriety allowed. "You're a long way from anywhere, Miss Vance. Traveling alone." Penelope swallowed hard. "Yes, I was. I was supposed to meet my family in Santa Fe, but I received word they've continued on without me." The lie came easier than admitting the truth that her family had cast her out for refusing to marry the banker her father had chosen, a man 40 years her senior with wandering hands and cold eyes. Zachariah studied her for a long moment, then turned to inspect the broken wheel. "This won't be fixed tonight. Santa Fe's still 20 miles west. My ranch is 5 miles east. You're welcome to shelter there until we can get you to town." Penelope hesitated. She had exactly $3.42 to her name, nowhere to go, and night was falling in a land filled with coyotes, outlaws, and other dangers she'd only read about in penny dreepers. Zachariah seemed to sense her concern. "My housekeeper, Mrs. Morales, lives at the ranch with her husband. You'll be perfectly proper under their watchful eyes." Relief washed over her. "Thank you, Mr. Garrett. I accept your kind offer." "Let's gather your things, then," he said, already moving toward her wagon. "Can't leave anything valuable out here." As they worked together to secure her trunk to his horse, Penelope caught him watching her with a curious expression. "Something troubling you, Mr. Garrett?" she asked. He hesitated. Most women traveling alone in these parts have a story, usually one that doesn't end well. Penelope's hands stilled on the rope she was tying. "And what's your story, Mr. Garrett?" "Most men living alone in these parts have one as well." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Fair enough, Miss Vance." He tightened the last knot and offered her his hand. "We'd best be moving if we want to make it before full dark." The ride to Zachariah's ranch was mostly silent, with Penelope seated behind him, her arms tentatively wrapped around his waist. The steady rhythm of the horse's gait and the warmth of Zachariah's body against the cooling evening air lulled her into a sense of security she hadn't felt in months. "There it is," Zachariah said as they crested a small rise. Below them sprawled a modest but well-maintained ranch house, a large barn, several corrals, and a bunkhouse. Lamplight glowed in the main house windows, and smoke curled from the chimney. "It's lovely," Penelope said sincerely. "It's home," Zachariah replied, a note of pride in his voice. Mrs. Morales, a stout woman with silver-streaked black hair and kind eyes, greeted them at the door with surprise but immediate hospitality. "Another stray, Senor Zach?" she asked with a knowing smile. "Miss Vance's wagon broke down," Zachariah explained. She'll be staying with us until we can get her to Santa Fe. Of course, Mrs. Morales said, ushering Penelope inside.
Come, come.
You must be hungry and tired. I will prepare a room for you. The house was simple but comfortable, with sturdy furniture, a few decorative touches, and shelves lined with books, more books than Penelope would have expected on a cattle ranch in the territory. Zachariah noticed her surprise. Books keep me company during the winter months, he explained. Feel free to borrow any that interest you. After a hearty meal of beans, cornbread, and beef stew, Mrs. Morales showed Penelope to a small but clean bedroom. Rest well, señorita. Tomorrow will bring new decisions. Penelope sat on the edge of the bed after Mrs. Morales left, clutching the letter she'd kept hidden. Her father's words burned through the paper. Your disobedience has brought shame upon this family. You are no longer our daughter. Do not attempt to contact us again. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she realized the full weight of her situation. She had nowhere to go, no family to turn to, and precious little money to start anew. The thought of what women alone in the West often resorted to made her shudder. A soft knock at the door startled her. She quickly wiped her tears and tucked the letter away. Yes. Zachariah stood in the doorway, a steaming cup in his hand. Mrs. Morales thought you might like some tea before bed. That's very kind. Thank you. Penelope accepted the cup, hoping he wouldn't notice her reddened eyes. He didn't immediately leave as she expected. Instead, he leaned against the doorframe, studying her with those penetrating blue eyes. Miss Vance, he began, then paused. Penelope. I don't mean to pry, but I get the sense you're in more trouble than just a broken wagon wheel. Penelope stared into her tea, watching the ripples her trembling hands created. What makes you say that? Experience, he said simply. I've seen that look before. The look of someone who's lost everything. She lifted her gaze to his. And when did you see that look, Mr. Garrett? In the mirror, he replied quietly. Every day for nearly 2 years after the war. The vulnerability in his admission loosened something in Penelope's chest. My family disowned me, she whispered. I refused to marry a man. My father chose a man old enough to be my grandfather with a reputation for unkindness to women. Zachariah's jaw tightened. And they cast you out for that? My father is not a forgiving man. Disobedience of any kind is unacceptable. Penelope took a sip of tea to steady herself. I was traveling to Santa Fe hoping to find work as a teacher or perhaps a shop clerk. Alone? With no connections or introductions. I had little choice, she said. I have some education and can read and write well. I thought perhaps that would be enough. Zachariah's expression softened. You were left by your kin, he said, his voice gentle but firm. Then you've got mine now. Penelope blinked in surprise. I beg your pardon? I'm offering you a place here, Penelope. Not charity work. Mrs. Morales isn't getting any younger, and she's been asking for help with the house. The men need feeding, the accounts need keeping, and I've been meaning to start a small school for the ranch hands' children. But you hardly know me, Penelope protested. I know enough, he replied. I know you'd rather face the wilderness alone than surrender your dignity and freedom. That tells me more about your character than a dozen letters of introduction. The offer tempted her more than she wanted to admit. I wouldn't want to impose. It's not an imposition if I'm asking, Zachariah said. Think about it overnight. We'll talk more in the morning. After he left, Penelope sat awake for hours, weighing her options. By dawn, she'd made her decision. She found Zachariah in the kitchen, drinking coffee with Mr. Morales, a weathered man with a kind smile.
Good morning, she said.
I've considered your offer, Mr. Garrett, and I accept on one condition. Zachariah raised an eyebrow. And that is? That you understand I'll be working for my keep, not accepting charity. I'll earn my place here until I've saved enough to move on. A smile played at the corner of his mouth. Agreed, Miss Vance. When can you start? Immediately, she replied, rolling up her sleeves. The days that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Penelope worked alongside Mrs. Morales, learning to cook for a dozen hungry ranch hands, keeping the house in order, and helping with the never-ending laundry. In the evenings, she kept the ranch's books, revealing a talent for numbers that impressed Zachariah. "Where did you learn accounting?" he asked one evening as they sat at the kitchen table, ledgers spread between them. "My father's business," she explained. "He had no sons, so he taught me the books, though he never acknowledged my skill publicly." Zachariah shook his head. "His loss, our gain." 3 weeks after her arrival, Penelope began teaching basic reading and arithmetic to 5 children whose fathers worked the ranch. They met in a corner of the barn that Zachariah had cleared and furnished with a blackboard and simple desks. "You're a natural teacher," Zachariah observed one afternoon as he watched her patiently guide a young boy through his letters. "I've always loved learning," she admitted. "Books were my escape when my father's house became difficult." As spring bloomed across the high desert, Penelope found herself settling into ranch life with surprising ease. The work was hard but satisfying, and for the first time in her life, her contributions were valued. Zachariah treated her with unfailing respect, seeking her opinion on ranch matters and listening attentively when she spoke. She noticed other things too, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, how gentle his hands were with injured animals, and the quiet authority he commanded without raising his voice. She caught him watching her sometimes with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. One evening in late May, a fierce thunderstorm swept across the range. Lightning split the sky, and rain pounded the roof with such force that conversation became impossible. Penelope stood on the covered porch, watching nature's fury with awe. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Zachariah said, joining her. "Terrifying," she corrected, "but yes, beautiful too." A bolt of lightning illuminated his face, and Penelope caught her breath at the intensity in his eyes as he looked at her. "Like you," he said softly. Before she could respond, shouts erupted from the direction of the creek. One of the ranch hands came running through the downpour. "Creek's flooding," he yelled. "Cattle are stranded on the far bank." Zachariah was moving before the man finished speaking. "Get the men," he ordered. "Ropes and horses.
Now."
Without thinking, Penelope grabbed her shawl. "I'm coming too." "It's too dangerous," Zachariah argued. "You need every hand," she insisted. "I can ride, and I'm stronger than I look." There was no time to argue further. They rode out with the ranch hands into the driving rain, reaching the creek to find it transformed into a raging torrent. On the far side, a dozen cattle were trapped on a rapidly shrinking island of land. "We need to get ropes across," Zachariah shouted over the storm. "Create a guideline." For hours they worked in the mud and rain. Penelope helped secure ropes, calmed frightened horses, and once caught Zachariah's arm when he nearly slipped into the churning waters. By dawn, every animal had been saved, but the toll was evident in their exhausted faces and mud-soaked clothing. As they rode back to the ranch in the gray morning light, Zachariah moved his horse alongside hers. "You surprised me back there," he said. "Most city women would have stayed by the fire." "I'm not most women," Penelope replied, too tired for pretense. "No," he agreed, looking at her with newfound respect. "You certainly are not." That night, after baths and dry clothes and a hearty meal, Penelope found Zachariah on the porch again, this time under clear, star-filled skies. "The storm's gone, but I feel like something's still brewing," he said as she joined him. "What do you mean?" He turned to face her fully. "I've been fighting something since the day I found you by that broken wagon, Penelope. Fighting and losing." Her heart quickened. "And what is that, Zachariah?" "The feeling that you belong here. Not as my employee or my friend, but as something more." He stepped closer. I know you plan to save money and move on, and if that's still what you want, I'll respect it. But I'm hoping you might consider staying permanently. Are you offering me a lifetime position as your housekeeper? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. No, he said, reaching for her hand. I'm asking if you might consider becoming my wife. Penelope's breath caught. We've known each other barely 2 months. And in that time, I've learned more about you than I know about people I've known for years, he countered. I've seen your strength, your kindness, your intelligence. I've seen the way you've made this place more of a home than it's ever been. What of love? She asked boldly. Do you speak of convenience or of feeling? In answer, Zachariah drew her gently to him, one hand cradling her face. I speak of a heart that was half dead until you arrived. I speak of nights spent thinking of your smile and days brightened by your presence. If that's not love, Penelope Vance, then I don't know what is. When his lips met hers, Penelope felt as though the storm had returned, this time inside her chest. She had never been kissed before, had never felt this rush of warmth and belonging. Her arms wound around his neck as she surrendered to the feeling. Is that answer enough? He asked when they finally parted. Almost, she replied. But I think I need to conduct further investigation. His laughter was silenced by her lips finding his once more. They were married 2 weeks later in Santa Fe with Mrs. and Mr. Morales as witnesses and the local judge officiating. Penelope wore a simple blue dress that matched Zachariah's eyes, and he presented her with a gold ring that had belonged to his mother. I never thought I'd find someone worthy of wearing this, he told her as he slipped it onto her finger. Life as Mrs. Garrett suited Penelope in ways she'd never imagined. The ranch flourished under their combined efforts. Zachariah's practical knowledge of cattle and land paired perfectly with Penelope's head for business and education. They expanded the small school to include children from neighboring ranches, and Penelope's reputation as a teacher grew throughout the territory. Their first challenge as a married couple came 6 months after their wedding, when a severe drought threatened the cattle and their livelihood. While other ranchers lost significant portions of their herds, Zachariah and Penelope worked tirelessly to dig additional wells and create irrigation systems that saved most of their animals. We make quite a team, Mrs. Garrett, Zachariah said one evening as they sat on their porch, watching the sunset after a particularly grueling day. Indeed we do, Mr. Garrett, she replied, leaning her head on his shoulder. In the spring of 1877, Penelope received a letter from Boston, the first communication from her past since she'd been disowned. Her younger sister Elizabeth had written in secret, informing her that their father had died of a stroke and that their mother was asking for her. Will you go? Zachariah asked when she shared the news. Penelope considered the question carefully. Yes, she finally decided. Not for my father, but for my mother and sisters. And I want them to meet you to see the life we've built here. The journey east was long but uneventful. Boston seemed smaller to Penelope now, its streets narrower, its society more confining than she remembered. Her mother, faded and diminished by years of living under her husband's thumb, wept when Penelope introduced Zachariah. He treats you well, she whispered when they had a moment alone. With love and respect, Penelope assured her. He values my mind as much as my heart. Her mother squeezed her hand. Then you are fortunate beyond measure, my dear. They stayed 2 weeks, long enough for Penelope to reconcile with her mother and sisters and to settle her father's estate. To everyone's surprise, he had left Penelope a small inheritance, perhaps a final acknowledgement of the daughter he'd cast out. What will you do with it? Zachariah asked as their train carried them back west. Penelope smiled. I thought we might expand the school. Build a proper building. Perhaps hire another teacher, so I can spend more time with my husband and prepare for our family to grow. Zachariah's eyes widened. Are you saying? She nodded, her hand moving to her stomach. Dr. Reynolds confirmed it before we left Boston. We're going to have a baby, Zach. The joy that transformed his face was worth every hardship she'd endured to find her way to him. Their son, Thomas James Garrett, was born on a crisp November morning in 1878, with Mrs. Morales serving as midwife and Zachariah pacing anxiously until the infant's first lusty cry rang through the house. "He's perfect," Zachariah whispered, cradling his son with hands that could break a wild horse, but now trembled with emotion. As Thomas grew, so did the Garrett ranch and school. Penelope's inheritance funded a proper schoolhouse, and by 1880, they had hired a young woman from Denver to help with the teaching duties. The ranch's reputation for quality cattle spread, and Zachariah's innovative breeding techniques earned respect throughout the territory. Their daughter, Eliza Grace, joined the family in the summer of 1881, her arrival coinciding with New Mexico's worst recorded heat wave. Despite the challenges, Penelope recovered quickly and was soon balancing motherhood with her responsibilities at the ranch and school. How do you manage it all?" Mrs. Morales asked one day as Penelope nursed Eliza while simultaneously reviewing the ranch's quarterly accounts. "I have something my mother never had," Penelope replied. "A partner who values me as an equal." Indeed, Zachariah's respect for his wife only grew with time. He consulted her on all major decisions, taught her to shoot and ride as well as any man on the ranch, and proudly introduced her as his partner to business associates. The years brought both joys and sorrows. They lost Mrs. Morales to pneumonia in the winter of 1884, a blow that left the entire ranch in mourning. Mr. Morales stayed on, finding comfort in continuing the work he'd shared with his wife and in helping raise the Garrett children. In 1885, Penelope received another letter from Boston. Her mother had passed peacefully in her sleep. The news brought grief, but also closure. With Zachariah by her side, she mourned the complicated woman who had given her life but never defended her against her father's tyranny. "She did the best she could with what she knew," Zachariah said as they stood together by the creek that had nearly claimed him years before. "Just as we all do. I want our children to know better," Penelope said firmly. "To understand that love doesn't demand submission or silence."
"They will," he promised.
"Because they see it every day between us." By 1890, the Garrett Ranch had become one of the most successful in the territory. The school had grown to accommodate 30 students with 3 teachers. Thomas, at 12, was showing signs of inheriting both his father's affinity for ranching and his mother's intelligence. 9-year-old Eliza was a born teacher, already helping younger students with their letters. Their third child, Robert William, born in 1887, was a quiet, observant boy who preferred books to horses, a preference Zachariah accepted with the same love he showed his more adventurous older son. One evening, as they sat on their expanded porch watching their children play in the yard, Zachariah took Penelope's hand. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "The day your wagon wheel broke and stranded you in my path." Penelope laughed. "That wheel breaking was the best thing that ever happened to me." "And your family disowning you?" Her smile softened. "They left me, it's true. But you gave me something better, a family built on love rather than obligation." Zachariah squeezed her hand. "Remember what I told you that first night? When you said you'd been left by your kin?" "Then you've got mine now," she quoted. "I thought you were simply being kind." "I meant every word," he said. "Though I had no idea then how completely you'd become my family, my heart." As twilight deepened around them, Penelope rested her head on her husband's shoulder, watching their children chase fireflies in the gathering darkness. From abandoned daughter to beloved wife and mother, from Boston society to the freedom of the New Mexico territory, her journey had been unexpected but perfect in its way. "I love you, Zachariah Garrett," she whispered. "Every day more than the last." His arm tightened around her. "And I love you, Penelope Garrett, until the stars fall from the sky." The ranch continued to thrive as the years passed. By the turn of the century, Thomas had taken over much of the daily management, allowing Zachariah and Penelope to travel occasionally. They visited San Francisco, New York, and even London, but always returned to the ranch with renewed appreciation for the home they'd built together. In 1902, they celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary with a grand party that brought friends and neighbors from miles around. Their children presented them with a leather-bound family history, meticulously researched and written by Eliza, who had become a journalist for the Santa Fe newspaper. From a broken wagon wheel to this, Zachariah marveled as they looked through the book together later that night. Who would have thought? Penelope smiled, the lines around her eyes deepening with joy. I would, she said. From the moment you said I had your kin, I knew we'd build something wonderful together. And they had a legacy of love that would endure long after the last cattle were counted and the last lesson taught. A legacy born from the courage of a woman who refused to surrender her dignity and a man who recognized true strength when he saw it. They remained at the ranch until the end of their days, partners in every sense of the word. When visitors asked the secret to their enduring love, Zachariah would always smile and tell the story of finding a beautiful, determined woman beside a broken wagon, cast out by those who should have treasured her. She was left by her kin, he would say, his eyes finding Penelope's across the room. So I gave her mine. And in the telling and retelling, their story became legend in Santa Fe and beyond, a testament to the power of choosing one's family and building a home founded on respect, partnership, and love.